3 months ago, I learned of my uncle's passing. We weren't particularly close, but he left me one of his houses in the will. I was touched but just wanted to sell it off. I am a fairly new father of twin girls and didn't need another thing to manage right now. To speed up the process, I decided to travel across the country to live in the house until a sale was assured. My job just requires a laptop and phone, so I was approved to work remotely for the time being. Unfortunately, my wife had to stay at her job, so I had to come alone. Stuff was never where I last placed it. I'd see shadows out of the corner of my eye. I've lose track of time constantly. At first, I treated it as a mini vacation. I had hoped it would only last a week, but the process was more involved than I thought. I had a realtor taking care of most things, but after a month, I'm still here. The other end of the kitchen led to a dining room which was connected to the entrance hall that also led into the living room and stairs to the second floor. Except for the few times the realtor came by with prospective buyers, the house was the quietest place I had ever been in. Going left lead immediately to a guest room and game room. Buster accepted his new living arrangements pretty quickly, but would never willingly go upstairs. I looked in every room and had to accept that somehow the dog made it outside, even though there was no doggy door and every door and window had been closed and locked. I was thinking about making flyers when I opened the front door and heard Buster scrambling towards me from the kitchen. I'd be so absorbed with work that I would block out Buster whining for food or to go outside. I started to set alarms to keep track, but I had too many important clients to slow down. This was all right with me at the time. I thought it would make it easier to keep track of him. Clients called me constantly, but we were getting a lot done, and I landed multiple large contracts in a row. I was working around the clock, but I knew I'd be due a promotion once I returned to the home office. I noticed things going wrong right away. I let Buster sleep in the bed with me that night. In hindsight, it was a huge mistake, but it made me feel better at the time. I thought it was caused by stress, loneliness. Either way, I fell in love with Buster and his presence was exactly what I needed. I even thought it would be a tremendous present to bring home to my girls. I just hoped my wife would feel the same way. My eyes left him for just a moment to put the jar back, and then he was gone. Before I completely lost my mind, the neighbor came by with a dog. She was an elderly woman who explained that she had been dog-sitting while my uncle was in the hospital. Now that I was here, she thought I should take Buster, the golden retriever. I thought the neighbor might have been forgetful, because she seemed to think my uncle had just passed last week. However, even the dog could tell something was wrong with the house. Then, Buster disappeared. Literally, 1 second he was standing right behind me, as I was opening the treat jar to give him a snack. I ran through the whole house calling his name. The kitchen was connected to the living room, and on the other end of that was the master bedroom and study. After walking upstairs, you had a choice of right or left along a balcony. Overlooked the living room on one side and entrance on the other. Going right led to 2 more guest rooms and a bathroom at the end of the hall. So I searched the surrounding neighborhood for another hour before giving up. I was ecstatic, of course, but I just couldn't wrap my head around how I could have missed him. Things picked up at work though, and I soon forgot about all the strangeness surrounding this house. Several times I'd get lost in a phone call or spreadsheet and suddenly find that it was nighttime. I was on top of the world, but my health was starting to suffer. I'd forget to eat and even sleep sometimes. There was always something else to do or someone to talk to. I even got better at taking care of Buster, better than I was taking care of myself at least. I almost called the cops, but I felt silly with the phone in my hand. I started to doubt I had heard anything at all. Then my good mood ended with a bang. Literally, Buster was whining behind me as I finished another spreadsheet. Then we both heard a door slam upstairs. I had purposely closed every door when I last came through here looking for the lost dog. But this door was now wide open. With no better ideas, I raised my frying pan high and walked slowly to the bathroom. There was no window in here, so it was pure darkness inside. I pulled it out and turned it on to cast some light on the floor. I immediately dropped it at the sight of the bright red liquid that surrounded my feet. Something did appear to be wrong with my pipes, though as they called out from above that the puddle was just rusty water. The banging must have been from a pipe breaking. Both cops had a laugh at my expense, but were otherwise understanding. For the first time since I brought him inside, Buster ran upstairs by himself. I would have to use the one landline in the kitchen from now on. I was dead tired and said some things to Buster that maybe I shouldn't have, and I did some things to him that I know I really shouldn't have. And if there were an intruder, surely Buster would have been making more noise. So I mustered all the courage I could manage and crept upstairs with frying pan as my weapon. To my surprise, they were happy to let me have the week off as a sort of mental vacation. Just like that, all my outstanding work was taken away. Before doing so, I went upstairs to see if things had gotten any worse. Yet, as exhausted as I was, I couldn't go to sleep over that excitement, so I stayed up to draft some more important documents for my company. It was dark upstairs, but enough moonlight was coming in from the downstairs windows for me to make out Buster standing in front of the bathroom. Those same 2 officers were able to show up, and then, slowly, we cleared every inch of the house. Yet, we found no one. Everything was locked. No sign of forced entry. So I called my only friend in town, and really in the whole state. An old college roommate who coincidentally lived 30 minutes away. Eventually, I unlocked my bedroom door and made my way to the kitchen with Buster leading the way. There had been a series of break-ins where nothing was stolen, but the police officers still offered to have a car sit outside for the night. I flipped on the hallway light, but nothing happened. I was scared to death at the thought that someone had to have sneaked into my house while I was there, probably when I was sleeping. I didn't know how long I would need, so I pretty much packed everything I had brought with me to the house in the first place. I was terrified. I decided to hang up the phone and meet him immediately. I needed the human company, and he could help me move my stuff. I played games with him and fed him a bunch of treats to make up for my earlier neglect. I started to relax when I took a step forward into something sticky. I tried to take it as a good sign that he still wasn't barking. That's what finally got me through the threshold and into the bathroom. Bizarrely, Buster just looked frozen. His tail stood straight up and he just stood there pointed towards the door. The whole time my eyes had been getting used to the darkness in the bathroom. It was too small for there to have been anyone there without me noticing. I suddenly realized that I had my cell phone in my pocket. This time I had no trouble calling the police. Thankfully, there was already a patrol car nearby, so 2 officers arrived within a couple of minutes. I fled the upstairs, and this triggered Buster to follow. Their powerful flashlights cut through the darkness like knives, but they soon found nothing was wrong with the upstairs lights. Because of their insistence, I climbed up the stairs again and clearly saw a muddy brown puddle in the bathroom. They even gave me a number of good plumber, though my cell phone was ruined after I dropped and left it in the puddle. I let him out and promised to call the plumber first thing in the morning. Before I knew it, Buster had made another mess in the living room. I decided to do something about the stress I had been under, and I spoke to my supervisor that same morning. With nothing else to do, I tried to focus on Buster. Then I found the first message. I didn't notice it for some time since I had been avoiding the second floor, but I realized that I hadn't actually called the plumber. Instead, I immediately saw a message written in red on the hallway wall. It read, "Losing your mind?" For a second I kinda did. I won't bear repeating everything I said or did right after. Let's just say I hadn't become any braver since the banging. I called the police again. The police actually took me seriously, something that bewildered me at the time, and admitted that this isn't the first house in this neighborhood to experience this. Even though I took them up on this, I soon realized that I'd never get to sleep tonight in this house. He offered to pick me and Buster up in a few hours, so I busied myself with packing up my suitcase. I left my room to pick up some doggy toys when my friend called to say he was waiting outside, but the driveway was empty. There was no friend, no car. I called him back immediately and he insisted he was outside. I listened to him get out of his car and walk up to the front door. He knocked and I could hear the door open and an elderly woman greet him. I walked out to the street and looked back at the numbers written on the curb and on the mailbox. Only there weren't any numbers, just a message, "Losing your mind," on the curb, written in red. My friend asked for my name and mentioned my uncle, but I had to get my stuff and, more importantly, Buster, so I entered the house one last time. We needed to leave. I put a leash on Buster and was shocked to see how haggard he was. I resolved to make it up to him when this was all over. I guess it had been a long time since I let him outside. I assumed the gate would be supernaturally locked too, so this was my exit. He waited patiently for me on the other side as I painfully pulled myself up and over the fence. I was suddenly aware of how weak and tired my recent lifestyle had made me. I followed more tentatively and, for the first time, examined the backyard closely. I jumped down and gave chase. Luckily, I found where someone had laid some stone bricks into the side for an easier way up. There was an iron fence surrounding the yard with another space between the bars that Buster could slip through. When I came back to the room, my suitcase was empty. Everything I had just spent the last hour packing up was back in its proper place. I tumbled down the stairs in my haste and landed hard on the cold tiles below. But I was only dazed for a second, and soon was in the kitchen with the phone in my hand. Her words gave me pause, though. The woman said she had never heard of either of us. I looked down to see the rest of the stairs that led to the entrance hall and living room of the house. Buster was nowhere to be found. Something is wrong. I think I'm having a medical emergency. After thanking her, my friend left and asked me if I had gotten all that. Eventually, the kitchen phone rang. Ironically, either of those options seemed preferable than living in a haunted house. I couldn't recall the last time I had even tried. Wait a second. How long have I been out here? There's something wrong about this house. I told him I must have given him the wrong address. Tell him to come to this house and an ambulance might be needed. Please help me. He rattled off the correct one and confirmed he was there. The knob turned freely, but the deadbolt wouldn't slide back. Still, I didn't know what forces were actually opposing me, so I walked to the backyard and said loudly, "Well, Buster, time for a little walk." It sounded like her, but in a mocking tone. I've never actually heard from her before. "Losing your mind" was written all over the hallway now, including on the ceiling and floor. Despite how thin he looked, Buster felt heavier than ever. I knew this was all just some sort of trick to not get me in touch with the police officer. I no longer had any doubt the messages were written in blood. Some of them were still dripping. I pushed through the pain and climbed the stairs yet again. I was really scared now, but Buster's presence helped. I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten. On cue, I heard Buster whining from upstairs. I knelt down to give him a hug and he gave me an idea while licking my face. I would have jumped if Buster hadn't been weighing me down. I heard the front door open and whoever it was identified themselves as the police. I even recognized the voices belonging to one of the officers who had visited previously. Why can't I remember his name? After asking him to wait, and I left the house again. The temptation to leave right away was great. I could just start walking and never stop. Despite how impossible this was, I focused on only one goal. I tried to leave out the front door like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't open it. Whatever was happening, it sure wasn't the result of a maniac hiding in my house. The glass door slid open easily. Buster bounded out happily. And then I saw it. A tree that grew too close to the fence and had several branches extending through and above it. Buster didn't need any prodding. When I was in the process of climbing down the tree on the other side, Buster growled once and then took off like a shot towards a nearby hill. He disappeared over the top and I scrambled to keep up on the surprisingly steep surface. It was still steep enough that I had to focus on placing my feet correctly to keep from sliding. So, I was looking down when my next reach up resulted in my hand grabbing carpet. Confused, I looked up, see the second floor landing. Demoralized and dead tired, I crawled the final steps and just sat on the landing for a while, occasionally calling for Buster. Whatever ghosts were messing with me, I realized they couldn't stop outside forces from helping. My wife's warm voice filled me with hope. She was concerned that she hadn't heard from me in a while. She was trying to tell me that my work had heard from me in a week, while I tried to tell her to call the police. I asked, "What do you mean? I was given a week off." "Dear, I thought you were supposed to continue working as soon as you got there." Yeah, but they gave me a week off because of all the stress I've been under." "Honey, you've been gone almost 9 days now." My stomach sunk, but I didn't hesitate to say, "Listen, you need to call the cops." I had just been trying to come up with an excuse to limit the amount of follow-up questions, but I ended up realizing that this was actually the most likely explanation. Maybe I was just suffering from a gas leak or brain tumor. My wife asked, "Baby, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I thought I saw a shadow move out of the corner of my eye as I answered, "Yes, I'm okay, but no, I need help. You aren't making any sense. Just listen to me. Call the police and tell them my uncle's name. Please help you. Pretty please?" With a cherry on top? I stared at the phone in my hand as my wife's voice continued to come out of it. She said, "Does your tummy hurt? When's the last time you ate? I wonder what Buster tastes like." I slammed the phone down, but whatever it was on the other side was right. My stomach was hurting. Only after I started running towards the stairs did I notice just how bruised and sore my legs were from my spill down those steps. Buster was back in front of the bathroom, lying on his side and looking thinner than I had ever seen him. I walked over and picked up Buster while a banging started at my front door. After calling out that I was upstairs, I turned with Buster and found the hallway stretched before me, many times its original length. I thought I must have really been talking to my wife. She had to have come through with calling the police and the ghosts just distorted the end of the call. I could hear her say, "I'm sorry, my husband wasn't feeling well." I heard the officer say, "I'd like to check up on him, all the same. He's resting in the bedroom. Can I help you?" So I started my trek back to the stairs and shuffled my feet as fast as I could, yelling all the way. Suddenly the hallway snapped back, and I found myself somehow right at the top of the stairs. But then a voice answered the police officer. A woman's voice. My wife's voice. I screamed as loud as I could just to get attention, but it was no use. I tried to speed up, but the hallway just stretched further. Sure, come in. He's right through here." It was right out of a nightmare. I was sweating profusely while every step seemed to get me nowhere. And then I heard a man's blood-curdling scream from downstairs. My momentum couldn't be stopped. I fell down the stairs and landed hard. I painfully crept to the kitchen and grabbed my trusty frying pan before making my way back to the bedroom door, as quietly as I could. Before I made much progress, the door flew open on its own, and something turned suddenly to me. I dropped it at once and crawled back to check on Buster. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I saw a long, thick trail of blood go around the corner and under my closed bedroom door. I was lethargic, but somehow made it to the couch in the living room. I waited there until nightfall, and then slept on the couch, on top of Buster. I was unsure what I was waiting for, but nothing horrible was happening to me while I waited. I wasn't in a hurry to change that. Digging the hole was exhausting, so I settled for just burying Buster now. But there was no life behind his big brown eyes. I gently laid him down in the hole and got to work. I planned on getting to the cop after finding something to eat. I imagined the food turning into worms after it was already in my mouth. I opened a box of cereal and had a handful up to my lips when I paused. He howled in pain, but at least he was alive. My stomach rumbled as I finally got off the couch. That was another problem with just staying put. I could feel a breeze enter the house, but I was too scared to move. I needed to concentrate my efforts on leaving this place. All of my senses had failed me before. However, my need for freedom eventually caused my feet to move. There was still a shadow of something under the door. Maybe the cop was secretly a murderer and had killed previous owners of this house. Maybe his sacrifice helped them move on. The door was unlocked and the keys were sitting in the front seat. I was positive I had picked up the frying pan. I could remember its weight. On and on. The house was quiet apart from my efforts. Whenever I stopped moving, the silence was complete. I was in an unfamiliar city, driving a cop car, with no money or other belongings on me, and I had no idea what to do next. But now I also remembered going to the kitchen and pulling out the knife. My eyes watched the moving shadows nervously. Whatever was waiting there had killed a man. That meant it could kill me. Now that their goal had been met, maybe they would leave me alone for a while. What if I had actually been opening a box of rat poison? But if it could have a physical impact, then surely it had to be susceptible to a physical impact too. So I raised the frying pan and slowly started to turn the handle. I sunk back into the car seat and then realized I was sitting in an armchair. I swung my frying pan down. The cop stood before me, a smile frozen on his face. We both looked down at the knife plunged into his chest. My hand was still wrapped around the handle. He fell to the side and I fell backwards to sit heavily on the now clean floor. I seriously wondered if I was losing my mind. I looked down to find I had the knife in my hands again. He wasn't moving. I put my head on his flank and was devastated to feel he was still warm but not breathing. I did nothing for a long time. When I woke up, I waited some more. But the bodies of Buster and the cop were still there. I needed to do something. First things first. I found a shovel in an outdoor closet attached to the backyard porch. I picked up Buster and carried him outside. His fur was still so warm. It was hard to believe he was gone. Sometime later, I wandered into the kitchen and raided the pantry. I wondered if the ghosts had just been trying to make me a murderer after all. Just in time because I was starving and didn't need any more distractions. How could I tell I was actually eating what I was looking at? I still wasn't sure what these ghosts were capable of. With that thought, I threw the cereal to the ground and stomped off, no longer hungry. Right on cue, I walked by the front door. It was wide open. Instinctively, I made a leap for it before stopping with my outstretched hand just a foot short of the door. This had to be another trick. I could see the door slamming shut in my face or even taking a few of my fingers with it. This was the most impossible situation I had ever been in, or even heard of. Upon slowly exiting the house, I saw the cop car just sitting in my driveway. My mind went wild trying to explain the situation. I couldn't think of any other explanation for my good luck at the time. So I just pushed my misgivings down and got in. I drove out of the neighborhood without incident, but I had new problems. So I kept driving. It felt good to be free of that house. It felt good to see the sun, so I kept driving. Left turn, right turn. No idea where I'm going. And then I realized I hadn't seen any other cars on the road for some time. Where was everyone? Where was I? The sinking feeling happened again, in the pit of my stomach, but also around my whole body. Back in the living room of my uncle's house, my arms were up like I was still holding onto a steering wheel. I started to cry with frustration as I stood up and screamed. How long had I been sitting there with a stupid grin, moving my arms up and down like a madman? It was on and glowing at me. I walked over to it and saw that something was already written down in this post. I turned around and saw my work laptop on the dining room table. It read, "Lost your mind? Good. Now you won't mind losing the rest." Suddenly my fist felt weighed down. I raised it to find another kitchen knife in my hand. I dropped it immediately. I erased the message and started to type out a request for help. I ignored the screen and just focused on the keys. But I kept hitting them wrong, and another message slowly formed. "I'm sorry, I've disappointed you all. For the last time, goodbye." I wasn't in the dining room anymore. I was in the study. Whenever I've tried to take a break, I find myself in a new room with new horrors descending on me. I kept writing and writing and writing, and my own words started to come out. I could have screamed again, but I noticed something had changed. I have sent out emails requesting help. I've posted on the local police department's Facebook for assistance, and I've just tried to keep writing no matter what. Did I fly? Drive? I can't remember. Have I always been here? I've met them, in person, several times. Why don't I know things I should? This is my latest attempt to keep my sanity. Once I opened the study door out to a hellish landscape and almost stepped out onto lava. But now that I think about it, I can't remember who my parents are, what they look like, or anything about my childhood. I was unsure if it was all an illusion. But I didn't even want to have a vision of my feet burning. So I just closed the door and resumed writing. I'm not even sure this is all because of ghosts. I found a way forward, but I really don't know what to do next. This is not a way to live, and I'm getting more and more tired. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and the truth is simply that I have no idea what's going on. But I'm running out of things to say. My hands are tired. So tired. As I've gone over these crazy events, I've realized that I can't recall my uncle's name, or what he looked like. I'm not sure I ever had an uncle. I'm trying to think really hard about how I came here. Even weirder, I can't remember my realtor's name or even what gender they are. I can't even remember the name of my daughters or my wife. Am I even a father? Am I even a person? I know I must be, because here I am writing in this small study. Now, I just remember this house and all the nightmares, waking and otherwise, I've experienced here. I'm feeling a lot like I was back in the cop car. I'm so hungry, and I'm finding it harder to focus. I keep hearing voices, and they're getting louder. I know if I stop writing, I won't last long. Ubsdefgilm shinkwibs. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. I need to keep writing, but I don't know what to say anymore. What's my name? I don't know. I'll die if I stop writing. I'll die if I stop working. ABCERGHIKLMNOQ PRSTUV Thuquikruven Fox Ovith Lazy Dogs. Dogs Buster. I miss Buster. But was he ever real? Is anything? I'm so tired, so hungry. I need to focus. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy goodbye. The quick brown him. Sorry jumped over pointed. You lazy dogs. I'm quick. I've jumped petty sap deal. Last time lazy dogs. I'm sorry. Jumped over disappointed you lazy. For the lazy dogs. Goodbye. I'm sorry. I've disappointed you all. For the last time. Goodbye.